Welcome everybody to our SEA coffee breaks. I am so excited to have Mike Veny and Leanna Lee with us today. They have been around SEA for many years and are always some of our favorite presenters. The topic also is one that is near and dear to my heart, but also to those that attend SEA and creatives. And it's basically mental health as a creative professional, independent contractor, just making a living and keeping that mental health. How do you do that as a creative professional? So I'm going to go ahead and let them give more background to their expertise on it. So Mike, if you want to kick off and then hand over to Leanna, and then we'll get going.
Sure. Well, welcome and thank you for watching this today. Leanna and I are the co-hosts of the Bettermental podcast. And in my profession, I'm basically a motivational speaker full-time, but I started my career as a full-time musician, actually. And I still incorporate that into my work. I do drumming in the workplace, which is a whole nother subject. But for me, I've battled mental health challenges for my entire life. And, when you struggle with these challenges, they're different for everyone, but they really inhibit you from doing certain things and getting things done a certain way and also relating to the world a certain way. And so I know what that's like. I battle major depressive disorder, anxiety, and obsessive compulsive disorder. And at the same time, like you, I have to show up and get stuff done and, deal with clients and all that. And so that's basically my introduction. And after Leanna introduces herself, maybe she'll tell you how we met and this came to be.
Hi everyone, I'm Leanna Lee and I'm a freelance content writer and journalist. Obviously, I also co-host a podcast with Mike and speak a little bit as well. And SEA has been was really my introduction to public speaking, which was crazy because I remember coming to SEA as a student, as a college student, and then later as a collaborator, and then finally as a speaker. So it's been kind of a fun journey. But I've been freelancing since college, since early 2010s. And it's the only lifestyle I've ever known. I've never worked a full-time job. And I started off, let's see, what did I start off doing? I started off doing freelance media, so it's photography, videography, and finally moved on to writing and journalism. And now I'm mostly in that content marketing and journalism space. And I think one of the biggest reasons behind my choice to be a freelancer was mental health, because I live with PTSD, situational anxiety, and depression. And it was not only a driving force, but it also became one of those speed bumps in building my business and in being a creative professional. And that's something that I've had to not necessarily overcome, but learning to prioritize, really, I think is what it comes down to, is rather than battling it, learning to work with it and then building a business that supports it. So I think that's probably been one of the most rewarding parts of my work as a creative professional. And with Mike, now he and I met at SEA at one of the conferences in, I think it was 2017, back when I was a collaborator. I was working on a video project with one of the vendors there. And I thought he was a fantastic choice. And Amy, I believe you were the one who gave me Mike's name and who suggested him as a good choice for this project. We were picked 5 different entrepreneurs to highlight as creative professionals. And Mike was one of them. So he and I got together as I was coordinating this. I was helping project manage and produce this project. And then after that conference, he reached out to me and he said, I would like to continue working together. He'd really enjoyed my voice on my voicemail message, I suppose.
Yes.
And we just ended up sounding really good together and working really well together. So I helped him produce his podcast at first, and then we became partners in a few different projects. And now we have Bettermental, which is an exciting partnership and brand that we hope will grow for years, I hope.
Yeah. And can I just say, it's funny, you bring up collaboration, and in the arts we have to do that. And here's how I remember it. I called you up to discuss coordinating this filming, and just dates, I think, and locations and stuff. And I got your voicemail, like, most people when you call them these days. And I remember listening to your voice going, wow, she's got a nice voice. And I just had this moment, this creative artistic moment. I'm like, I think my voice and her voice would go well together on something. So that evolved into what it is. And it's been pretty epic,
Yeah, it has. And now we talk every week. We do this project together. We record across the world. We've had to record virtually and do things virtually during COVID, but more recently, we've gotten back into in-person recording. And yeah, now we keep up with each other's lives and talk quite often. And it's great to have that, not just collaboration, but I think that partnership is really what it comes down to. It's so great to have that. And I don't know a lot of people with the exact same background as Mike, and I have quite a few friends with chronic mental health issues, but it's still great to be in contact with someone like Mike consistently, because I think that's a really, really important part of the small business owner creative professional journey, isn't it, Mike? Is that connection with a community, even if it's just one person that you talk to like once a week, it makes such a huge difference.
I absolutely agree. Sometimes in the arts and in business, we think of it as like, I'm just going to come out of my hut and take my spear and get my fish by myself and bring it back. That's how we think. And, that's really not what it is when you start to really get into it. You actually need a community. You need multiple communities actually for different things. And what's been great is that because, this is a working business, actually. It's going to be soon. We can tell the world it's going to be an LLC soon, our podcast, because it's starting to just really just take on some momentum, which has been really cool to be a part of. And even then, Leanna and I have to communicate as business partners working together. And if you've followed business and how it works, usually partnerships are just a nightmare that ends very bitterly. And so we've been able to really cultivate this, what I would call a healthy working relationship with each other, where there's communication. And trust me, we disagree on most things, but we had to warn the designer that came in to do our branding. I had to tell her, like, it's going to seem like we don't like each other at moments, like we're just so like far apart, but that's just how we work. It's okay. Like, we love each other. So the thing is, I'm glad you brought this up about community, Leanna, because it's important to be in environments where you feel you have healthy relationships.
Absolutely.
I want to start with right there, right? So how do we find that community, and how do you know when to leave a community that you've joined that isn't good for your health? And what are the signs to know that that is the right community that you're, to find? I know right now, it was last week, I was talking to a art student who graduated in the midst of the pandemic. And it seemed like the community she was in, based on some comments, were all dealing with the same issues. So they were all feeling lost, all feeling like they weren't finding their place, which it's great to be able to know you're not alone, but it's also then you don't have maybe the people helping you get through it, because it sounded like they were all kind of bringing each other down. So again, how do you handle that? Where do you find the right group, and how do you manage when maybe you're not in the right group?
Wow, that's a really great set of questions. As you were talking, I thought about trying to find really good mental health communities. So you've got business communities, right? You've got business support groups, you've got freelancer support groups and independent contractor support groups, and people who are creative professionals who are in the gig and creator economy, like banding together and doing fun things together. So you've got those kind of groups, and then you've got sort of mental health support groups, and there aren't too many places where they overlap. I think that's becoming more common now that we're having a lot more mental health conversations. We're realizing how integral mental health is to a healthy workplace. But traditionally, they've been kind of separate. One has been kind of medical, sterile, academic, and one has been a bit more kind of free and easy creative. and yet so many creative professionals struggle with this. So as you were speaking, I was thinking of trying to find a mental health support group. And I really, really recognized as I was doing all this research, and I was looking into Facebook groups, I was looking to other types of online groups like Slack channels and all sorts of stuff. And I realized that there were basically two major types of groups. One was a crisis mode group, where everyone was in an emergency at the same time, except possibly some sort of moderator. And it was nonstop, really depressing content. And that's not to say that there shouldn't be groups like that. I'm glad there are, because a lot of people, we all need places to vent. We all need places to go when we're really feeling low and lonely and stuck. But if you have put a lot of work into your mental health and you've gone to therapy, you're on the right medications, you're trying to build something and you're trying to pull yourself out of crisis mode, or you've been out of crisis mode for a while and you're trying to kind of it can be a really difficult kind of group to be in. So then the other type of group is more supportive, a kind of growth mindset group, where you support each other when you have bad days, bad weeks, bad months, whatever. But for the most part, you're focused on looking ahead and on growth and how can you improve and what you can do to better yourself, and ways that you can pursue health in a kind of a mindful, supportive way, without judgment and without self-recrimination. So that's kind of, it was interesting to see the difference between the two groups. And I'm part of several now that I'm really, really proud of. I'm in a Facebook group that is a more professional writers group. It's called Freelance Content Marketing Writers. If there are any writers out there who are listening or watching this right now, please look that up. The founder of the group, Jennifer Gregory, is a fantastic person. I'm also part of Leapers, which is an amazing community for freelancers and independent contractors and small business owners of all industries. It was started in the UK by Matthew Knight, but they have an international following, and that's a wonderful Slack channel. And I pop on every day to say, like, we all say good morning and talk about what we're working on. And it's a very mental health focused group. I also started my own group of just like 5 or 6 other women, where we check in again on Slack and we talk about mental health and our income goals and all sorts of stuff that just occurs to us day to day, and we support that. And like I said, this my relationship with Mike as well is its own little community. The people that we have worked together with are our own little community, and that is also very supportive as well. But Mike, I think you probably have a lot more to say than I do about how to know when a community is or is not right for you, and what you should do about that. What do you think?
Well, first of all, I just want to reiterate everything you said. You brought up a great point, Leanna. It's so funny. I feel like we're recording our podcast right now.
I know. Right? I was just thinking, I think this feels like a podcast episode.
We're recording. And if you ever hear any of this stuff on our podcast, we just took some of the recording, right? But no, sure. The thing is, Leanna said something really important, that, the groups that we're a part of multiple groups, and you want to be intentional. That's what I got from actually what you just said, Leanna. We want to be intentional about that. And you also made me realize, as you were talking, that people are part of certain groups and not others, and you can probably talk about things in certain groups and not others. For example, if you're in a group that's about growth and business growth, that's probably not the place to talk about your depression. It's not that it wouldn't go over well, it's just not a fit for what the group is all about. So it's important to know that we need to be intentional in parts of different groups. One other one that I do want to recommend, completely free mental health support group, it's called Emotions Anonymous. Alcoholics Anonymous has been around for many, many years and very successful. I mean, they have different anonymous groups for everything under the sun. But there's one for mental health called Emotions Anonymous, completely free. You go on their website, you can find Zoom meetings, you can find phone meetings or in-person meetings. And that has been a great support for so many artists that I know, actually. So really, really important to check out that. But for me, it's important that when I'm a part of a community, I'm around people that I have a healthy relationship with. So there's something called trauma bonding. And trauma bonding is when you bond over shared trauma. Case in point, 2020 and like the election, regardless of where you stood on it in the US, people would be sending around memes to each other, complaining about the other candidate, and sometimes actually feel a sense of bonding from that. And this happens all the time in the arts, where people sit around and say, nobody's going to pay us, artists are all poor, we're in it for the love, not the money. And sometimes you get caught in this trap of negativity. You don't even realize it. You think you're bonding with someone. So it's really important to just pause sometimes and think about the people you're involved with. There are plenty of artists in the world who are very successful doing work that they love and are not sitting around complaining. And it's important to find groups where you can feel good about yourself and it's not based on negativity. Also, being around people that challenge you, that make you feel a little bit uncomfortable. One of the things I love about all the groups I'm a part of, including working with Leanna, is I'm challenged. It's interesting. Leanna and I don't know if you can tell, are two different ages, and but I bring that up because there's different worldviews that come into play. Sometimes we'll be talking about one thing, and I'll give what I think is an appropriate solution, and she'll just give me this look like, "What are you talking about?" Like, people in my group are not doing that. This is not how we see things. In fact, that's problematic, or something like that. And the cool thing is it opens up my eyes, and she gets to see some of my worldview. So we get to challenge each other. So it's important to be with groups like that. But when you're done with a group, you'll know it by how you feel. Usually it's your gut instinct. Just listen to your gut. If you walk away feeling like crap from a certain situation, it's probably not a fit. And this is a rule for, friendships, groups, relationships, and all that stuff.
I'll also just add that you can outgrow a group. It doesn't necessarily have to be a negative feeling. It could be just a sense that you're in a different place, right? You're in a different place with different goals. I remember being in several business-based groups, and I kept feeling like I didn't really quite fit in because I wanted, like, they were focused on being a six-figure freelancer, right? And who doesn't want to be a six-figure freelancer? I was really excited about that idea. But over time, I realized that they weren't really prioritizing what I needed to prioritize. They weren't talking about things like mental health. They weren't talking about things like personal goals. It was all about getting to those numbers. And I was like, you know what? Do your thing, but I don't know if this is going to work for me, because I keep coming back to, as excited as I am about this idea, I keep coming back to stuff that's even more important to me, and you don't address that. And so it just didn't end up being a fit. But it wasn't this bad thing where I'm like, oh, these people make me feel awful. It was just like, you know what? I just kind of stopped reading the post. I just stopped doing the homework. I wasn't that interested in the sales they were doing or the offerings. And I'm like, you know what? I haven't really participated. I haven't been a good group member. So why should I still be in this group if I'm not really interacting? So that might be a good indication, is if you sort of stop interacting, try and dig a little bit into why. Why did you stop interacting? Is it something that on your end where you've really been able to participate? Is it something on their end where you feel like there's a disconnect? Maybe dig into that a little more. One last thing is, C, of course, is a fantastic community. And with present company, I just want to point out that communities like C, you can really tell how amazing and supportive they are by the people that surround them. Like Mike was saying, the healthy relationships you're in. Now, one of the reasons I was really drawn to C and kept coming back year after year was because of Mike, because I realized that communities like C cared about the students that came, the young creative professionals that came for advice and ideas and support. They cared about the whole person. It wasn't just about giving them income advice or connecting them to lawyers or publishers or giving them a day in the life of different artists. It was also about bringing in people like Mike to talk about mental health, to talk about the emotional side of running a business. And it is a very emotional process. So you can really you can really tell the value of communities like C when they bring in people like Mike and people that are concerned with the whole person, with health and helping people build healthy businesses. So little
A little shout out for C. Thank you. And I
shout out for C.
Yeah, I look at it and I really look at all the presenters we have, and it is every single one of them, cares so deeply about seeing other people succeed. And again, that's why we bring people like Mike and you back, because that is what the deep rooted passion really is seeing other people succeed with what they want to do and love to do and work through the challenges. I want to add, or I want to ask about something you talked about, and you said, pursuing your dream, running your own business, it has those emotional challenges. What are some of those greatest challenges that you personally have come across, and also maybe with people you've worked with and talked with, and then what those are, and then how I'm not going to say how you overcome them, because I think it is more about managing them. Some you may overcome, but others you're going to manage and work through, right? And know they're there and present, and you're going to manage them. So I would love to hear both of your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I'll start there. How much time do we have on this one? Let me just bring up a few that cover all of us. Rejection, dealing with rejection, and in fact, I forget the arts, forget running your own business. That's a part of life, right? Rejection. Also imposter syndrome and battling that. Feeling like you're not good enough. So these things come up, and it's really important. I'm so glad you asked about this, Amy, because it's really important that you have tools to manage them. Like you said, Amy, it's not something that goes away. I know, I speak on big stages around the world, and every time I get on stage, my anxiety is through the roof. Through the roof. I'm like, Mike, why are you doing this? Like, why are you doing this to yourself? But it's not paralyzing me, and it's not affecting my work because I have tools to manage it. So I just want to give an example of one that actually I talked about with my therapist the other day. I go to therapy every week, and I was telling her how about 8 years ago, when I got a rejection from a client. For me, it was speaking engagements. I'm trying to pitch myself, and I got rejected, or they chose someone else. My depression would spiral into a dark place. I mean, it would hit my self-worth. And we're talking about a few days of just like nothing getting done. It was so hard on me. And I would have to text her and say, can we talk, have an extra session? This is really bad. Nowadays, rejection still happens all the time. And I go, oh, okay, next. That's because I've learned how to manage it. I might, in my mind and heart, feel like, oh, I wish I would have gotten it, but it's not affected me. So basically, to answer your question, you get to this point where the stories in your head don't rule your life and your business the same way. And that's what the importance of tools is. What about you, Leanna?
Wow. I mean, you covered some of the biggest ones, but I would add loneliness. I would add overwhelm. Yeah, loneliness is a difficult one because especially if you are doing this by yourself, you are in some ways alone. And we've talked about community. We've talked about how you can kind of reach out to other people and join communities intentionally that have the same values and the same priorities as you do. But at the end of the day, it's still a difficult emotion to battle. I've been going through this myself recently because my husband and I are now digital nomads. So we have no home base at the moment. We left the US, we're currently in the UK, and we're not surrounded by any sort of in-person community. Our families are both in a different country. Well, I have some family in the UK, but for the most part, we're pretty much alone. And so he is my in-person support, basically. And we're both freelancers. So again, we're sort of, sometimes that loneliness can compound if you have a partner who is a creative professional, an independent creative professional, and is also kind of struggling through their own things in business. So it can really compound if you have a lot of these different cases come up. But And then that sort of creates overwhelm. So I guess loneliness can kind of lead to overwhelm. The way I've kind of learned to, I don't really have a secret to overcoming loneliness, because I think part of it is just the journey. But it really does, as Mike says, you learn ways to manage it and to tell it, not necessarily tell it to stop, but to ensure that it doesn't control the narrative of your life, right? So you may be alone in certain things, but you can work towards feeling less lonely by surrounding yourself with those communities, by putting systems in place that support your mental health. Because often to me, loneliness is an indication that my mental health is a little bit off kilter. Maybe I'm overly anxious, maybe I'm heading towards a depressive cycle, maybe it's the weather. Oftentimes that can trigger feelings of loneliness. It's not just my work. So finding that root cause can be helpful. And then overwhelm, who isn't overwhelmed at the moment? You know, I think we've all developed anxiety in the past couple of years. And then that really, to me, that really comes down to how you're managing your business. What systems do you have in place? You know, Mike and I talk about a lot about systems in Bettermental. And I know it sounds boring and practical, but it really is. Like, I found it to be so useful to dig into why I do things, how I do things, what platforms I use, what tools am I using? You know, are they making things easier for me or harder for me? What problems are they actually solving? Or are they causing more? So little things like that, finding ways to automate some of the processes in your business, like, you know, figuring out how to manage your inbox, or better ways to deal with your finances and do your accounting. Like, little steps like those can really, really help with overwhelm. And the better you are at putting these systems in place and learning to recognize what tools are best for you, the less likely you are to deal with overwhelm, or the more likely you are to overcome it, because we all deal with it no matter how long we've been in business.
Yes, and with that, I want to add, you know, what I got from what you just said, and I never really just put it together like this, but learning to run your art business as best you can with systems, with being organized, all that stuff is actually good for your mental health, just overall. So separate from having, you know, mental health systems in place, but I think it's really important. And I just want to give an example of one. I was a little overwhelmed this morning. It's 1:30 p.m. Eastern time here as we're doing this. I was a little overwhelmed. Knew I had to record today and I had to be at my best to talk here. And I made it a point about half an hour before we went on Zoom to meditate, to do my meditation, to put myself in a room, get real quiet, put a blanket around me, and just meditate for 20 minutes, put me in a good place. I knew that I needed that. Had I not known that, oh my gosh, I don't know how I would have showed up for today. That would have been interesting. So that's an example of a personal system that you can have in place for when things get stressful, emotional, or overwhelming.
That's really good. As you were talking, I was thinking about, so I just came off of helping, working many of the other hats I have on another conference. And after it was over, going into it, one of my colleagues said, it seems like we're working really hard and it shouldn't be this hard, right? You know, it shouldn't be this hard. And so afterwards, I'm a planner by nature. If you've been around me, so you probably know that very well. And so afterwards, I sat down and I just made all these notes on our processes and everything about what is it, why was it so hard? And where can we not make it so hard? Because we were all stressed, you know, obviously when it's hard. So I want to ask how important that pause is, because to me now, not only pausing after the event to say, hey, why was it? But now we have this information, now making sure that we take the pauses and create the processes. So when we get to this point next year, we have taken the time so it's not as hard next year. So I just want to ask, you know, in those processes, how important is the pause and how do you use that even in your own careers?
Leanna?
Oh, that's a great question. Yeah, I found it to be crucial, to be honest. In fact, we've been working on some material with that very topic, funnily enough. Our upcoming episode is all about resetting your business in a stress-free way. And we're really talking about, I think, isn't the first, I can't remember if the first one is
Stress-free reset.
Yeah, but I am trying to remember which one of the reset, because we have the little acronym.
Oh, the first stop.
Stopping and
Actually, pause. Yeah.
yes. So we do have one that talks about pause, but it really. So this is the beginning of the year, right? So we're at this point we're kind of looking back on the old year. We're looking ahead, and being able to just sit down and let all that happen is so incredibly important, and so is, I think, having some time in between, realizing what the issues are maybe, and then planning for them and then implementing them. I find that to be really helpful as well, because when I'm writing, for example, I often find that I edit best after I've let a draft sit for a little while. I don't do anything with it. I just finish it. I get a rough draft out there. I let it sit, and then I polish it. And I find that to be super helpful, because that allows my brain to first move on to something else, but also in the back of my head, it's kind of percolating a little bit. Maybe I have more ideas, maybe something comes up, and I can come back to it. Mike, do you have any thoughts to add on that?
Yeah, and first of all, I just want to say, actually, on our site, bettermental.fm, by the time you're watching or listening to this, there is a download if you go to the site, and you can get our stress-free reset, which is a great thing to use if you're feeling really overwhelmed and you're just at that place that, Amy, you were just talking about. But I want to bring up something really important here. And if you're watching this, there's this little thing that's going to happen once I am done with this Zoom meeting. I want you to watch very closely. I'm going to pick up this mobile device right here. Probably. Most of us do. Why? Cultural habit. In fact, many people have notifications on their device constantly coming at them. And the reality is the human brain is not meant to just go, 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 and go, and go. One of the reasons we are so busy sometimes is we want to distract ourselves from our feelings, actually. So we think it's being productive, but it's actually just distracting ourselves. So it's important to make it a habit, a daily habit, actually, to pause, no matter how busy you are. And what you'll find when you do that, you'll actually have time to just ground yourself and become more effective. This morning, I was feeling overwhelmed, and I came down to my office. First thing I did is I clean off my desk. That's my workday startup ritual. Clean off the entire desk and actually put a glass of water next to me so I can drink water, and just pause, close my eyes and get clear on what I want to accomplish, what things need to be done, and all that stuff. So it's really important to start making that a habit. And if you've never done that before and it seems scary, I just encourage you just to practice, 30 seconds of just closing your eyes and just doing nothing. I guarantee you will start to grow addicted to pausing and put it in your life regularly.
That just reminded me, Mike, you know how I'm sure your therapist told you this, but my therapist has definitely said, and over the years, not just my therapist, but actually I'm also part of an adoption community, because I'm part of the adoption triad. I'm a birth parent. And when my adoption story started, there was a lot of grief, a lot of emotion, a lot of stuff going on. And one thing we learned with this amazing support group I was in, and at one of these, at a retreat, we learned that it's so important to sit with your emotions, to let that happen. And as you were talking about distractions, and I have my phone next to me too, and I'm probably going to be checking it, I had to think about how whether it's good or bad or ugly or just nothing, you just want to pause and just kind of ground yourself and sit in the moment. It's so important to just let whatever is there happen. And obviously this doesn't necessarily directly relate to the planning and problems scenario, but sometimes that pause can help you identify certain issues, and at least if not give you the solution to them, at least help you get to the source of them, and to figure out where they're coming from, if not how to solve them. So I just wanted to add that, because I think so many, I don't think many people realize how many business things that are great for business are also great for mental health, and vice versa. So pausing is fantastic for business and to help you identify potential issues and look for potential solutions, but also great for mental health to help you sit with your emotions and look at root causes and see how you can work through some of the things, or just ground yourself for the day, as Mike was saying. Excellent habit.
That is great. We are really getting close on time here. And I just want to kind of make sure we have time to kind of do a wrap-up question here. So I would like to ask each of you, what is your top tip for somebody right now who is, you know, in their art, in their business, just really kind of at a point where they're maybe struggling and not sure what to do, how to move forward, how to get over that or get into a better place? So what is your best tip for somebody like that right now with that?
I would say my best tip is, when you're stuck in that space, you can't get out of it alone. You know, when you're in a bad place mentally, whether it's just frustrated with work or in depression, the worst place you can be stuck is in your own head. So the importance of inviting other people in is so important, and that's very scary. As I say that, I know a lot of you might feel very scared hearing that. But in terms of being an artist and in that spot, it's important to find mentors that can challenge you, not just somebody, you know, that's kind of doing what you want to be doing, but someone that's really like above your level, that is doing well, that is mentally healthy, and try to form a relationship with that mentor and ask them if you can reach out to them and listen to what they share. They can really, really help you. And that's something that I still do to this day. I have multiple mentors that are way out of my league and really challenge me to be a better person and teach me things that I just never knew about myself, you know?
That's great. I would add to that. So I'm a very practical person. And when I struggle, I find a lot of comfort in getting some of the logistics sorted. So money is such a huge, huge source of overwhelm and stress and depression and every other negative thing that you can name when it comes to working for yourself, by yourself, oftentimes. So when I am struggling, I look at the numbers. I look to see what I'm bringing in, what I need. And when I say what I need, I mean the bare minimum to get by for the next month or 2 or 3. And then I figure out what I need to do to get there. Do I need to pass on stop taking on freelancing projects for a little while and drive for Uber or Lyft? Do I need to deliver, groceries? Do I need to go to a friend or my parents and ask about a loan? Do I need to put my student loans on minimum payments? Like, what are the practical, tangible things that I can do right now to make my financial situation a little bit easier? Because this is how it's helped me. It's helped me not only get that immediate pressure of what's next, how am I going to live off my back, Maslow's hierarchy of needs, taking care of that bottom level survival stuff. It also puts me in a better position for negotiating and moving ahead with work, because there is nothing so hard to get as a good project when you really, really need the money. It's so easy to find yourself taking on projects for low pay, taking on commissions with people that aren't necessarily a great fit for you, finding yourself in really difficult, awkward relationships and having difficult conversations. And then if you're in crisis mode and you're having mental health issues, and you suddenly have to break off these relationships, or you can't produce the work, it gets even worse. So I find having that just really practical conversation with myself is super helpful, because it gets me it gets that bottom level taken care of. So then I can say, okay, that's done. What can I do next? What's next for my business? And sometimes that means nothing. That means taking a break. That means if this month's rent is taken care of and I can buy groceries and I've got gas in my car, I'm going to take a few days or a week off and just kind of let myself deal with this and get over this and move on and move through it. And sometimes that means, okay, I'm ready to move on. And now I have to get into planning mode. Now I spend some serious time working out what's next in terms of, business plan and actionable steps and that sort of thing. So yeah, I always feel a little sheepish talking about the practicalities, because I feel like as a business owner, especially when you're a creative, you're like, oh, the solution's going to be like fun or emotional, and it's going to be I don't know, fun and complicated. But I'm like, no, really, like it's boring, and it's money, and it's systems and processes and relationships, and it's So yeah, I think between the relationships that Mike was talking about, finding those mentors and really digging in with those, and then looking at the finances, I think that's a great foundation for anyone who's just having a tough time at the moment.
I absolutely love those, especially, knowing, not trying to go it alone. And then, Leanna, I know it was like an aha moment for me I think it was last year when we did the coffee break, and you just talked about, the ability to not get stuck in that cycle of taking the low paying job because you felt you had to, right? And you were desperate. And then that's not healthy, right? To stay in that place. And so thank you again. I just want to kind of pause and mention that because of it. So because of how important and just how easy it sounds, but like really, really listen to what that means and think about how you can incorporate that. And I know Dan, I think, would like to ask a question here. So Dan, yes, please unmute. I'm going to go back on mute.
Okay. Hi, guys. Yeah, sorry I stepped in late. I'm having internet issues. But I just want to actually thank you guys for coming and having this conversation. And I'll definitely check out the recording to catch what I missed. I think this is an aspect of the business of being a creative that's often just kind of ignored. And it's just so great to hear you guys talk about it. So just practically and bluntly and go through that, because that's really what's helpful. I know that I'm in a mastermind group with a bunch of other artists in my area, and we started out, we were talking about business plans and all this stuff, and slowly but surely it's 99% of the time we are just talking about how are we coping with things, how is everyone doing, where are we at mentally, how do we feel that about what's going on. And I think the benefit we've gotten has been huge, just even having that, being open to talking about those issues as opposed to just the business plan. Even when Leanna, when you said like the practical stuff and how it can really help smooth over some of the more difficult, gnarly kind of emotional things that you're dealing with. And sometimes it is that simple thing of get your ducks in a row, know that other people go through this stuff too, and it's okay. And you can make that progress. So I really just wanted to thank you guys for this, and I'll definitely be checking out more of what you're talking about.
Thank you.
And,
thank you so much for that.
And as a reminder, Dan, Bettermental.fm is our podcast where we talk about this stuff all the time. And
I'll listen in.
Please
yeah,
do.
and you can reach out to us directly. We'd love to talk with you and answer any questions or connect you with any resources that we can.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you both so much, Leanna and Mike. It's always a pleasure, always an honor. I always feel better after talking to both of you. So thank you.